And welcome back to another episode of CamBro Conversations. And today's conversation, we are talking about fitness and mental health in a post-COVID world. I appreciate that sounds maybe a little bit too soon as we're still going through COVID. However, hopefully we're past the worst of it and it's time to really adapt into how we can make the most of our fitness and our mental well-being alongside that. To do that, I'm joined by Dale Burke, who is one of the head coaches at MTN Coaching. Any faithful listeners of the podcast will recognize the name MTN and know that it is a brand that I work with a lot in terms of creating content. Dale, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on, mate. How are we? We good?
Yes, we're looking forward to getting into a fairly serious topic, but one that I think that when I was thinking about guests, it'd be suitable to discuss this with. You were one of the first names to hand, and I think that's hopefully a compliment to the content you put together over the years and that you've shared and the openness that you've had about a subject that, albeit on social media, we're talking about it more, but sometimes it's very shallow. It's very, and I don't want to call people virtue signaling for some of the stuff they put out there. But when we speak about a serious topic like this, we need to speak about it in a way that's actionable for everyone that listens, rather than just maybe somebody who's maybe got a diagnosed condition or maybe somebody who's diagnosed himself. And we won't get into the challenges around that. But in terms of kicking off, Dale, do you want to give us a wee bit of a background on how you've ended up in the fitness space and how that maybe relates to mental health?
Yes. So, well, first and foremost, I was a joiner for 10 years and I kind of got into the whole fitness game. Typical background of wanting to do better at football, fell into training, fell in love with training, loved how my body adapted, getting bigger and stronger, and I just found this mad, crazy passion for it. Typical kind of bloke answer when it comes to fitness world. I was, as I say, a joiner for 10 years, and as the years went on, I just fell out of passion for it. I knew this wasn't exactly for me, and I had to kind of make a change when it came to, again, as we delve in with my mental health, and I just knew this wasn't for me. I reached out and found a mentor, which was Mr. David Hatt, who you know very well. And then he kind of gave me some guidance. I managed to put some things in place and started to grow my one-to-one one-to-one coaching business, and I managed to make the jump, and managed to get there. David helped me through a lot of things, and he had this great idea of starting this online business, and myself, David and Ryan kind of head started what is now MTN, and now we're here. So
a whirlwind
fantastic
tour of Dale Burke's arrival at one of the biggest fitness businesses in Scotland now. You guys are doing a fantastic job, and it's grown arms and legs, which is great. But the foundations are there for, like you say, that passion for fitness, maybe that challenge with your purpose in your career and where you were thinking you were going. And I'm always very careful about people thinking that moving into the fitness industry is the answer to all their problems, because we look at the dropout rate in PTs. But certainly for yourself, you made that move and you've not really looked back. You've actually probably ended up in a better headspace, well, considerably better headspace due to the choices that you've made, and we really will delve into that. And I think when we talk about mental health, we are two guys from the west of Scotland. We're an area where one of the most famous phrases probably is man up, or what have you got to be worried about? And I think we're trying our absolute best to move away from that without it becoming maybe people overreacting or overstating maybe a short down period where something challenging's happened to them. And instead, we're talking about the challenges that happen to everyone throughout periods in their life. And all of us will probably experience periods where we have significant challenges. And I think the stat last year was 1 in 4 people will have a diagnosed mental health condition. And if we think about the other 3 people, maybe they've not had a diagnosis, or maybe it's just been something that they've moved through more easily or more difficultly than others. So Dale, tell us a little bit about your own background from a mental health perspective. And I think a lot of the listeners will appreciate how open you are, both on Instagram, but equally in this conversation. I'm sure they'll value that.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I think about my own mental health, I didn't really realise this until I started properly thinking about how far back it could have maybe stemmed from. When I was in a place, like, as I says before in my introduction, I was a joiner for 10 years, and it was a point of, like, I started to feel a little bit lost, or like I noticed that I was getting really, really angry. Now, not to a point where I would do any significant like harm to anyone, or I wasn't end up like looking at jail time or anything like that. Nothing crazy, but it was almost at a point where I had this uncontrollable anger where it's in the pit of my stomach where I could not control it sometimes, and it'd be the smallest things it would trigger this, and it could be even to a point of where it would be now then affecting people that I care about, and I would lash out at my mum, lash out at my partner at the time, my friends, stuff like that. And then it wouldn't just be the anger, it would be there. It would be then the aftermath of that. So you would almost like, I would almost see like red lash out. And then after that, like the cloud comes down and I'm just sat there with this kind of overwhelming feeling of like overthinking, overanalyzing every situation, every single word that I said. And it would just, like my mind would just proper race, and that would be kind of the first kind of contact where I found like almost feeling anxious, of being that panicked way where I cannot switch my brain off, where I cannot focus on anything else at one time, and it's just thoughts running through my head.
Yeah, I mean, that term you've used there, first contact, is really important, and we're going to get to some of the work that you've actually done to delve into this as we go through the podcast. But that first contact and that first experience of that uncontrollable anger, that horrible feeling inside, that racing thoughts within your mind, I'm sure there's a lot of people that can resonate with that, but equally, it's always individual to you in terms of how that felt, and you knew in terms of your personality away from that, this isn't really me, and this isn't really how I see myself, Dale Burke, as the best version of myself in terms of how I should behave. How did this develop, and do you know what was maybe driving this? Was there something behind it?
No, I generally, I think it might be down to the way that I would maybe almost be living my life. Like I just didn't have that direction almost, or I maybe didn't have that sense of purpose of what I was wanting to actually do. Maybe feeling a little bit lost in what I was wanting to do in my life, and then just because I was feeling lost, then that would be maybe that outlet of taking it out on others. But again, like that was just the very first point. It was as things started to develop, the main point where I kind of came to like to the head front of like, okay, maybe there's something a little bit wrong here. Because at the time I used to think I was just angry, and people used to call me angry, and I knew that wasn't who I was. Like I just said, that was not my personality. I'm a very nice guy. I'm very approachable. I'm a very sociable person, and I would kind of be more angry within myself. But then the first point of real contact, where I went, oh, holy shit, there's something not quite right here. I went through a pretty rough breakup, and at the time it was like, it's like anyone who goes through a breakup, you know, you're always going to feel a bit anxious. You're going to feel sad. I mean, you've just went through a breakup. Of course, that's what you're going to feel like, right? Now, what I couldn't grasp was the fact that, okay, I had this problem where I was feeling sad, I was feeling anxious, I was feeling down. Now, I could pinpoint my finger on this. I could go, okay, this is why I'm feeling like this, X, Y, and Z, because I went through this breakup, this is happening, blah, 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 blah. Now, after 6 months passed, year passed, whatever that may be, how long it ever takes you to get over someone, that is no longer the case. But I was still left with this kind of gut wrenching feeling of overwhelm, and it was really hard for me to describe. It's like you couldn't go concentrate on one thing at one time. It would be like thought, constant, and that is where I started to go, right, okay, there's something not right here.
Yeah, I can see that, because we're talking about, and I think we all need to be really careful with diagnosing ourselves as depressed or anxious when a particularly hard-hitting episode occurs. So, for example, the passing away of a loved one, or the breakup of a relationship. There's always, like you said, going to be that initial period where you're anxious, you're upset, you're distressed. It's very challenging. You're down. But it's when that becomes away from that initial bout of feelings, if that's a continued feelings and the way that you are months, years down the line, then it's something deeper than just a reaction to a significant event. And it's something deeper within what's going on within our heads and within our lifestyle.
Yeah, and it's this is probably the biggest thing when it comes to like struggles with mental health, you can't pinpoint it, but you are almost going through this daily battle every single day that you wake up. And it's like that first thing you wake up, you go, how am I feeling today? Am I going to be okay? You wake up and you go, nah, I'm not feeling great today. And it's this mental battle of what you can do to feel more normal. And this is one of the things, like, and I'm sure we'll delve into this a little bit, when it comes to mental health and anxiety and depression, it kind of robs you of that almost control of feeling normal as such, and you just, that's all you want, and it's just this daily battle of trying to fight this thing that you do not know what it is.
Yeah, you've got this demon inside your head, and I know that's always a horrible thing to imagine, and maybe sometimes an extreme thing to say about what's going on, but ultimately that's where you were at. And is that what you term the plunge? I know I've heard you speak about this before, but what do you term the plunge? We spoke about first contact, where you first become aware of this horrible feeling. How does this relate to the term the plunge that you've used previously?
The plunge, where was pretty much the breaking point for me. That's kind of what I would describe the plunge as. Is you kind of get the first contact, you maybe realising, right, okay, this is maybe something, I don't really know quite what this is. And the plunge for me was, again, as I say, I was over this kind of full situation of this breakup. I was maybe about 7-8 months down the line, and I'm, again, still getting up, feeling these horrible feelings, couldn't see what was going on, don't know what was happening, feeling like someone was gripping my chest and twisting my shirt to a point where I was like almost kind of crushing my rib cages. And then I was at work one day, I was still in my job, I was sitting in my van, and I think it was up in Balloch somewhere, and I finished the job, came back in, sat in the van, and it just, the whole gut wrenching of shirt getting twisted, fingers starting to shake, couldn't really quite catch my breath. And this is the kind of first experience where I really had the first major panic attack of, like, literally could not catch a breath, and I was sitting like, this is the end of me here. I cannot believe I'm sitting in my van up in Balloch and I'm going to die. Like, this is what was going through my head.
Yeah.
And I managed to calm myself down, and I just burst into tears. Literally just burst into tears. A grown man in his van crying his bloody eyes out. And the first person I could think of was phone my mum. And she was like, it's like, I don't know what just happened there. I thought I was having a heart attack or something. She was like, right, okay, finish your job, do what you're doing, come home. I came home, managed to finish everything I was doing, and this was probably the moment of me that I'm not ashamed of, but the big moment for me, because I got to a point, I got home and I was sitting at the edge of my mum's bed, and she was like, what's been happening? What is the matter with you? And I was like, I just don't know. I really don't know, Mum. I just do not feel well. I don't feel well. And I just broke down, and the face that my mum's face is something that I will never ever forget. Like, she's seen her son crying his eyes out in her arms, like not having a clue what's going on, and she just looked helpless, like she didn't know what to do, where to go, and almost like she could lose her son at any moment. And it was probably the most heartbreaking thing that I've ever went through in terms of seeing my mum like that. And it was generally, that's what I define as my plunge of a moment where this is not right.
Yeah, it's that lowest moment, and I think there's so much for us within that. And first of all, thank you for the openness, Dale. But talking about the helplessness that your mum's face had and the helplessness that she felt, it's because at that moment in time you don't have an answer. You're not able to tell her, I'm feeling depressed or anxious because of X, Y, or Z, and it's something you can immediately change. It's that helplessness of, I can't identify why I feel this way. I do feel this way, and I'm not sure what the steps forward are. At the moment, all I feel is pain, and I want to let that out. And that's what maybe those tears and that kind of conversation was about. But ultimately, like you say, it's heartbreaking because one of the people that cares about you the most in the world is looking at you and doesn't know what the next steps are. What's the roadmap to get out of this?
Exactly. And also, like, as you said, like, from being two guys from the west of Scotland, it's almost that you grow up feeling like, okay, like you as you say, man up, or it's like people are going to start to judge me. Like, I'm feeling this way. Am I going crazy? Is there something the matter with me? Why am I feeling like this? And especially from a point of view, I've never had a bad upbringing at all. I never really struggled with anything in terms of financially or anything like that. Like, I was always well looked after. I had a great family, a great group of friends. Like, I had everything that a lot of people would probably say, you've got everything in the world you could ever want, and you go and you start to feel guilty for feeling this certain way, and you're like, why am I feeling like this? There's suffering all over the world, and I've got everything I've ever wanted, and I'm still feeling like this. I'm so ungrateful, and then that's just adding to that another layer of feeling the way that you're actually feeling, that you don't even know what's going on.
Completely resonate with that, and I think we've all, well, I know a number of us have worked hard on things like gratitude and perspective during this lockdown period. And that's all well and good when it comes to some areas of us moving past the challenges that we've got and feeling better about ourselves and being more self-aware. However, when we're talking about this level and this depth of feeling that you've had, it's not a case of reading Man's Search for Meaning
No.
Man's Search for Meaning, and thinking, oh, well, it could be worse, I could be an outfit. It's a case of, listen, my life's quite good. I'm quite happy. I'm obviously you're not loving your job, but you're making good money. You're living in a nice house. You've got your family around you. They're all supportive. It's not that which is triggering what's going on internally and those feelings you're having. There's maybe other things at play, and that's what makes it so difficult.
Yeah, and it's not until you get to a point where I'm at now, and you go through this kind of field journey of, like, you look at that and you look at your position at that moment in time, you go, right, okay, I had this, and this, X, Y, and Z. And you have everything you ever want to the status quo of what society tells you that is what you should have and what you should ever want. And that is not necessarily true. You maybe convince yourself of that, thinking, oh, I've got this job, a full-time job, a job for life as a trade. I've got a great family. I've got this, I've got that. But you don't really look into that situation a little bit deeper. You're going on what society says, and what the society is kind of determining what is a good value to have in your life. And it's not until I've kind of came away from that I've maybe realised, like, it's those aspects which I thought were great is not actually that great for me at that time.
Yeah, of course. Like you say, there's certain societal norms that we can fall into that make us think, I should be happy. But equally, we've had people on the podcast, and more recently, Andy Ramage speaking about his move away from alcohol and sobriety. And he was, by all accounts, mid-30s, smashing it in the city of London, Range Rover, £500,000 house, everything that you could think of. But internally, he wasn't happy, and there was elephants in the room that he had to address before doing that. What led to you initially getting a better understanding of this? Because you speak really well on it, Dale. It's not something that we're just talking on the fly on because it's such a serious topic. It'd be disingenuous for us to do that. What kind of sources did you turn to understand what was going on?
So first and foremost, the reason why I started outsourcing other things, like, the first thing a lot of people would do is go straight to their doctor, and it's typically they give the same spiel. I know there's great GPs out there, and I know there's a lot of GPs out there that are really working hard to kind of change this, but your typical GP will just be like, okay, you've got a chemical imbalance in your brain, something wrong with your serotonin balance, here, take this, go on about your life. Now, I didn't really like that, and I didn't like the aspect of maybe going to taking pills, and I tried to go to these kind of seminars where we're free, and I just didn't fit in. Like, I just knew that was not for me. Like, that is out of my reach. I'm not dealing with that. But I started to think, okay, so how can I then fix this problem? I need to outsource. I need to maybe think about how can I understand this? Let me get a better understanding of what it is. And just like yourself, the more you take your fitness or an injury, for example, if you get injured, you then end up becoming almost a professional in how to fix that injury, because it consumes you, and it's like, that is your biggest problem right now. So how can I go and fix this? In the gym, I'm going to focus on external rotation. I'm going to focus on working on my rotator cuff, and you'll know every single exercise under the book how to rehab your shoulder. Now, that was my thought process when it came to trying to fix my, I'll say fix and as if it's nothing there, but better my mental health when it came to that, is if I get a better understanding of what's actually going on, then I might actually be able to have a better understanding how to get out of this hole. And I started looking at things and research and reading books like Lost Connections was a massive one, which I just recently read. Always looked at Simon Sinek. Is that how you say his second name? I always say it
Simon
wrong.
Sinek.
Simon Sinek, yeah. Simon Sinek. And there was another guy, Prince EA, all on YouTube. And I started researching these things and listening to these guys speak, and they just came across really, really well, and it made me instantly feel better. It didn't take away the problem, but it made me feel better, and it also gave me a different way of thinking. And I think we'll discuss this near the end. Like, when you go through this sort of stuff, it does give you a different way of thinking and a different perspective on things. So that was the main thing. And a lot of these guys like Lost Connections, Simon Sinek, Prince EA, and all these kind of mental health gurus, if you want to call them that, on YouTube, that's what kind of really helped me kind of kickstart where I wanted to go.
First of all, we'll very briefly touch on the fact that you didn't want to go down necessarily the medication route, and that's absolutely fine. If there's people on listening that have decided to go down that route, that's your prerogative. However, Dale had some reservations, particularly around some of the maybe conflicting interests that some of the medical bodies have with respect to funding for some of the drugs like sertraline and serotonin, etc. However, you decided to, and we love the phrase in the podcast, take action by seeking out sources and experts that were readily available through books, through YouTube, through podcasts. And that's a fantastic feeling. And I can only imagine in what you said there is it didn't address the problem straight away, but I started to feel better because I was doing something about it. Whereas when you were sitting in your van in Balloch, maybe you'd flicked on a YouTube video once in a blue moon about panic attacks or about anxiety, or maybe you hadn't, because you hadn't at that point gone through what we're calling the plunge and the lowest of the low to decide that, you know what, it's probably something I need to do about this.
Yeah, and this is the thing. It's when you're going through a big struggle like this, you're in such kind of distress, you're in such pain that you don't understand what's going on, and you literally just want to feel normal, and you want that suffering to end. So this is why a lot of people, like anything, if you feel unwell, the first people you go to is your doctor. And we think that these people are whatever they say is gospel, and it's not always the case. And for me, I think when I went and how quickly they almost just went, right, okay, take that and that'll make you feel better. I was like, nah, this isn't, when we think about, they'll just say, you've got a chemical imbalance in your brain, you've got low serotonin, take this pill, this will help that balance. And see, until now that I've researched this, and especially in Lost Connections, and it was a hard hitting home truth, and understand if people are taking stuff and they are on medication, and if that is helping you, then by all means keep doing what you're doing. That is one thing I want to make clear here. It's not, this was my prerogative, this is the way I thought about it. I didn't want to take any medication because it started to make me feel worse. And they speak about imbalances, and you briefly spoke about it right at the start. Like, you could be going through some sort of heartache or distress in your life that you might lose a loved one, you might have lost a child, you might have had a really bad breakup. Like, you're not got a chemical imbalance. We are not broken machines. We are going through grief. That is grief that you're going, and and this is the thing, that if you lost a child and you go to your doctor and you feel, I'm really, really feeling sad, I don't know what's going on. Well, of course you're going to feel sad. You've just lost a child. But that doesn't mean that you're clinically depressed. It doesn't mean that you should be taking some sort of pill to fix that external factor of you've just lost a child. That is just putting a band-aid on something that has to be addressed.
Yeah, there's going to be a period of time, and I think we have touched on that, where that initial horrible situation and incident is going to lead to a period of heartbreak and hurt that has to almost be embraced, and embraced is a terrible term for it, but it is the only term that comes to my mind at the moment. You have to go through that period and accept that that's what's happening. It's when it goes beyond that to that 7-8 months that you're talking about, Dale, where you'd broken up, you were over that particular individual, but that situation was, or you were still feeling terrible and it wasn't actually to do with that situation. Whereas when we initially maybe go to a doctor saying, I'm a little bit depressed, maybe you've had a terrible situation occur, that's when just jumping straight on the medication can maybe be, like you say, a sticking plaster for a gaping wound.
Yeah, there's no checklist. That's what it is. There's not a. It's just like these sort of things that they'll go through. They'll go, right, okay, this you've got that. You're feeling down. Take this, and it's the same. It's just, and there's so many of my friends that have done this as well, and it's the same kind of thing. That, oh, I'm fine. I've just got an imbalance in my brain. I'm taking these, and that'll work for a while. But if you start to think about it logically, if you're anyone who's been taking antidepressants for a number of years, you will start on the lowest dosage. You'll feel all right for a few weeks or a few months. You'll go back to your doctor. I don't feel so great. They aren't working. They up the dosage. Again, same things happens and occurs. And you never thought to think that these are actually not really working. And what tends to happen is this placebo effect of okay, I'm in so much suffering. Take this. This will make you feel better. Someone you trust in your GP, and they turn around and say, "Take this pill. This will make you feel better, and it'll take away your suffering." As soon as you take that placebo effect happens, and you're like, "Oh, I feel great. I feel much better now. Much better." That only lasts for a few weeks, maybe in a few days. Might not even last at all, because you start to see the actual external factors of how you're living your life is what is actually starting to cause this depression, not because you've got an imbalance in your brain, and taking this pill is not going to just take that instantly away from you.
Yeah, I mean, that was extremely passionate, Dale, and I think you can see from the time that you spent within this yourself, the research you've done, and the opinions you've formed on it. You're certainly somebody that, and you've said that phrase there, the external things that are going on inside you, outside of the conversation, the one-to-one that you have with your GP, and maybe the medication that you're prescribed. There's so much more to it, and everything that goes in around you, the sources you consume, the people you spend your time with, the job you do, the fulfillment you feel from doing that, the amount of exercise you have, the food you eat, the sleep you get. And again, I'm just listing a few things off there, but there's so much that comes into it that dictates what's going on in between these two things. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm tapping my head.
Yeah, but again, like it's just the same. It's the same thing as well. Like we fall into this kind of world of. Like, I changed my career when I was 26 years old, and I know there's plenty of people out there that they're living this life and they fell into this almost blindedly to like a career that they don't like. Let's say, and I can guarantee you, a lot of people will be suffering from stuff because they're actually doing a job that they really dislike and they don't have any passion for it, and it might pay the bills. And I get that. I totally get that. People need to put food on the table, and people need to pay for childcare. They need to keep a roof over your head. I get that, but there's also a point where you're backed into this corner where you think, I've put myself in this situation. I've made my bed. Now I need to lie in it. Like, you maybe fell into this career that you thought was great at the start, and now you really don't have much direction. Your boss could be an absolute dick, excuse my French, and it's about this. You have zero control. If you're in a job where if you turn up to your work every day and you go, okay, Colin, this is what you're doing from 9 till 5. You're going to sit at this desk. You're going to pick up the phone. You're going to say this, and this. I don't want you to take your eyes off this script. I want you to say this to each every single person that is on this phone. Can you think about that logically? There's zero creativity. There's zero input. There's zero initiative. You have no room to be who you are. You are just turning up to work, getting told exactly what to do, and that's it. And you move on and you go home. Like, that is, to me, there's no wonder people are feeling the way they feel if they're doing that within a job.
Yeah. One of the things that you and I have talked about previously offline and both shared recently on social media has been about purpose. And a lot of that comes from what we do for our money and our career. And like you say, there's very few personalities. And I do know a couple that would be absolutely fine in a role like that kind of clocking in, clocking out, doing exactly as you're told, following a very strict process. There's a few people I know that would be absolutely fine doing that, and their mental health and well-being wouldn't suffer. But the vast majority of people, and most of the people listening to this, will want something from their career and their day-to-day that gives them an element of fulfillment. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you that it has to come from the fitness industry, and neither is Dale. And I'm not going to tell you that it has to come from the business development industry and the sales industry that I'm in, because there's times where the stress that I put myself under would cause maybe people who aren't as passionate about it as me anxiety. And likewise, there's people that would never ever want to get up at 5 a.m. and go and train people in a busy gym like Dale does. So there's lots more to it, and it's a case of horses for courses. But having a purpose in our day to day is probably one of those fundamental lifestyle changes that we need to consider for our mental well-being. Because even if you're part of an organization or a role that you quite like doing, but maybe you're not doing well at it for that period of time, your mental well-being suffers. Maybe you've just, and we can maybe talk a little bit around this COVID-19 period and the lockdown, but if you've been placed on furlough and you maybe feel that you've lost some of your value to the business because you're not working, but still taking a wage, I know there's people that have really suffered with that because they felt that I'm not contributing at the moment. I want to work. I want to go to work. I'm not working 40 hours a week. I've got an extra 40 hours a week where I don't know what I'm doing. My money's still coming in, but I don't have a purpose and a drive. And that's why a lot of people who become unemployed, and there might be more of that happening as the months go on and we go into recession. They lose their purpose and their drive, despite maybe financially being okay. So you can tick one box, but the box in terms of I'm contributing isn't there.
No, 100%. And like just kind of touching on that like lockdown aspect of things. And by the way, I wasn't bashing anybody who does a 9 to 5 and keeping that there, but as like even just taking that from the external factors, like that doing that 9 to 5 might not be the most creative, and it might not be the most, you might not have that much purpose, but it does the job to get you the financial stability that you need to then fulfill your purpose, whether that may be taking your kids to the football every Saturday. That is your joy, that is your purpose, that is your fulfillment. Like it's not down to just solely your work either. It is also these external factors, and that job could be doing that. But when it comes to like lockdown, as you said, mate, like if you think like just how like you could be financially stable, and then you've got all this time in the world, you've no commute, you might only see these people that your colleagues, the only time you see them is when you're in the office, and it's just almost having your input in something. Like I can imagine when you go into like team meetings and stuff like that in your work, there's this kind of back and forth of like you put your word in. Oh, that's a great idea, well done, that's a good idea, let's run with this, let's go with that. It's that sense of that sense of belonging. That's what it is. It's like you feel like you belong somewhere, and you feel like you have that purpose to keep on moving forward, never mind the financial situation of it.
Yeah, when it came to the lockdown period, and even now when the vast majority of us who work in corporate careers or for commercial businesses are still working at home, many businesses have done all they can to have Zoom meetings, Microsoft Team meetings, to replicate that. And I've been very fortunate with my employer for the support that we've had, but also the number of events that we've had booked in our diaries to make sure that we're still able to have. And the term we're going to come up with here, Dale, is connection. Because if we don't have connection and back and forth, like you say, your job could be a total tick box, but if you really like working with a couple of different people and you have a good bit of banter around that, and it looks after you financially, the connection you have is really important. So I'm very thankful that I've still had 3, 4, 5, 6 Zoom meetings a week with different people, different teams across my business that I've networked with. And at the start of it, you do have a bit of banter about the fact you're still working at home. You have a bit of banter about the football you talk. It's different to the office. It is different to the office. It's different to the time that we have. And I think we'll probably go in a little bit on this, Dale, but what has it been like having the gyms back open? How have your clients responded? Because you worked on everyone online, didn't you? But then some of them that were one-to-one have come back to being one-to-one clients. How are they feeling now that they're actually seeing you in person?
It's night and day for me. Like as I says, for my clients, and as much as you can put things online, and as you probably said, like when you're doing your meetings in a Zoom call, I've been doing Zoom classes, I've been kind of putting everything on remote. There's only so much that you can break everything down visually, you can see it in front of you, but having that connection of body language, hands-on approach, these external factors of like your peripheral vision, and showing someone these external cues that you can be hands-on with your clients is just, there's nothing that's going to match that. And right now, the buzz about every single one of my clients is unbelievable. It's just so good to get them back in. And I think it's almost having that structure for them as well. It's that extra bit of accountability where there's no hiding either. So like when you come into the gym, there's not really any room to hide. When you're on a gym class, you may be like 20 people in the gym class, like you could hide behind your computer screen, you could turn it around a different angle and go, oh yeah, that was hard there, maybe miss a few reps. But if you're right in front of your personal trainer or your coach, there's no hiding in it. Then in turn gives them a better workout, then in turn makes them feel a hell of a lot better. But the buzz about the gym right now is massive, and I really wish we did get it open up earlier, but we're here now, and I hope it stays that way for the foreseeable future, because it is a massive importance to especially people's mental health. We need the gym for that connection. Like, it's, as you said, that lost connection between banter between friends, going to a class where that might be the only person that you see in that time. It's like, even I've got a few clients who do like double sessions. They've maybe not seen each other out with lockdown, but that's the only time they come in and they meet each other in the gym. They're doing double sessions together, and it's just a lot better environment. And I think a lot of people are never going to take the gym for granted again, and I hope they don't.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that just underlines the fact that for now, I'm very much happy working at home. I'll continue to do my Zoom meetings. But my God, I'm happy about face-to-face gym interaction, because it's very important, and at least makes up for the fact that I'm not seeing people in a corporate environment. And the other thing that we've used one C word, connections, and everyone knows that listens to the podcast know I love alliteration. I like community as well. And if you think about the coaching environment that, for example, MTN built during the lockdown period, you built community with things like the Fat Loss Project, where people were in a Facebook group, they were on the same Zoom classes, they were on live Q&As. That's fantastic. But when you go into a gym, and if you go at 5:30 every weeknight, 5 nights a week, you see the same people, you nod to each other, you smile, you say hello, how are you getting on, how's work, how's your training, how's your diet, are you looking forward to the football this weekend? That cannot be replaced with when you jump on a Zoom class with one instructor, no. And that's unfortunate.
Absolutely not. And this is what it actually goes into a lot of detail, and we'll speak about this going forward, and how you can hopefully better your mental health, finding your community, your tribe, if you want to call it. Us as human beings have always relied on being in a tribe, right? I'm going to get a bit philosophical here, right? I'm going to get a bit deep. So, like, if we've always been, way back when our ancestors first appeared on this planet, the animals are a lot bigger than us. They were a lot faster than us, probably a lot stronger than us as well. Now, we hunted and lived and survived as a group, as a pack, as a tribe. If you get separated from that tribe, you're in big trouble. You better believe it. And this is when you start feeling anxious, you start feeling lonely, and it's the exact same. And we live in this world right now where, especially with COVID, where you take everything away, everything's remotely done, you live in your house on your own, you've not got that tribe, you've not got that connection, you've not got that community. It's the exact same when you follow a football team. It's why you have so much passion for this football team, because it's a community that you have these connections with people who hold the same value as you, do the same things, are in the same situation, you can relate to one another. It's the exact same when it comes to that, CrossFit, a class, whatever it may be. Having a community and a network of people around you who want to do the same thing as you, and think the same way as you, and going through the same things as you, ups and downs, that is where you're going to feel that sense of purpose. And it's massive when it comes to having better mental health.
I like it when you go philosophical and deep, Dale. Big fan of it. Now,
thank you.
Now, we've spoken about your first contact. We've spoken about your plunge. We've already started speaking about some of the ways that you can do what you've termed as a rise, and coming out of that. We talked about medication. We talked about some of the ways forward. We're now talking about things like lifestyle factors and purpose, community, connections. What other areas would you want to talk about when it comes to putting ourselves in a position where we can rise and better our mental health?
And I think, first and foremost, it's always going to come down to that acceptance of something is happening. You need to accept the fact that something's going on in your head, and you need to not be ashamed of that. And I know it is very difficult, to go through something is kind of a very, very personal matter, and it can be very difficult to kind of share that with anybody. And you don't need to share it with someone, but I would very highly recommend sharing it with someone that you can trust. It doesn't need to be a stranger, but share it with someone that you can trust, and just that accepting of, okay, I need to deal with this head on, and you need to start to look for other revenues of being able to, other avenues, other avenues of trying to figure out what's going on. So that, and then what would then lead into the way that you maybe speak to yourself. So self-talk is a massive thing.
Let's first of all, that acceptance piece is massive, and we all need to accept sometimes that we've got a problem. It's the same as if we're related to a fitness perspective. Sometimes people, it's really funny. We go two ways with body dysmorphia. We either think I'm so lean, I don't need to really diet for this holiday, or it'll only take me 6 weeks to get a six pack. Or we go the other way and we think, oh God, I'm so out of shape. And how many girls and guys do you think that call themselves fat and use terrible self-talk? And that's where that leads into what we're talking about. How we communicate with ourselves internally is a huge thing. And hopefully for the listeners that haven't already listened to episode 15, we spoke about my self-talk when it came to me changing job and going through a redundancy period. How I spoke to myself put me in a position to be confident when I spoke to potential employers and didn't let me get down. Whereas if I'd spoken to myself negatively and thought, oh, you're useless, Colin, like it's actually your fault you get me, or you're never going to get a new job, or you're never going to be good enough, or from a fitness perspective, Dale, how many clients do you have that call themselves and they maybe use terms like, I've always been fat, or I never finish my diet, or you know what, every weekend,
big man. I'm the big man, or the wee man, or I've always been this size, I've always been this. And I was reading a book, it was called, I think it was actually on your podcast, Chris Williamson suggested it was Chasing Excellence, reading a book, and they spoke about the frequency illusion. And this is almost this how you talk to yourself, and it's almost kind of similar to the law of attraction. I know some people are like, oh yeah, law of attraction, it's woo-woo hippie magic. It's not at all, and it is your thoughts determine your outcome. All right, it's your thoughts always determine your outcome. And when we speak about the frequency illusion, whatever you're constantly telling yourself, your subconscious picks this up. So let's take example, right? If you got a new car, you just bought a brand new Volkswagen Golf, you love it, right? You're in the car, you're absolutely buzzing off it. You're like, oh, I absolutely love this car. You're in your car all the time. You're constantly thinking about your car. Think about this, or anybody who's listening. Think how many times when you've first bought a car, how many times do you see that almost same car drive about? Every time you're in your car, you go, oh, look at that car. Oh, I like that. That's lovely. Oh, look at that. Might not be the same colour, might not be exact, but you're always seeing a lot more Golfs on the road. And it's not because Volkswagen have all of a sudden has this influx in sales and Golfs. It's because you're subconsciously telling yourself, how good is this car? This is amazing. This is great. And the exact same happened when I joined City Building as well. Like, I never used to see a City Building van in my life. I never even used to think about it. By the way, City Building used to be the company that I used to work for when I was a joiner, for anyone who doesn't know who they are. I never used to see a City Building van ever until I started working there. And it was just like, it's all you see in the road. It's all you see in the road. And that isn't because there's more workers there. It's just because you subconsciously know that exists. And the same can go for when it comes to your goals, your fitness goals, or your mental health. If you're constantly telling yourself that I'm down, I'm feeling sad, and I get that it's not as easy as going like, okay, it's time to be positive. Positivity has to be worked on. It's not something we just gain instantaneously. And the word that I always like to use, instead of thinking about positivity, let's look at being a bit more optimistic of what we want to actually achieve, or what we want to be able to do to better our mental health. If some days we're going to get up and we're going to really, really struggle, and it's okay to feel like that, to go, right, okay, I know I'm really going to struggle, I'm not going to get out of this, take a step back. But the next day that you need to maybe try and push yourself that little bit more and go, right, okay, I'm feeling this way, but what what am I grateful for? And again, going into this kind of gratitude thing of maybe making gratitude lists is always a great way to go forward. Think about, write what you're grateful for, the roof over your head, write it down, pen and paper, get it out into the world. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for the limbs that I've got, that I can walk, I can move. I'm grateful for my dog, my partner, my wife, whatever it is. There's things in your life that you're always going to be grateful for. It might not necessarily be your mental health, but there will be things there. And once you start to address those kind of things that are a little bit better in your life, that you start to see a little bit more positivity. You start to feel a bit more optimistic when it comes to your mental health. And it takes time. That's the main thing. It takes time.
I think at the start we did say that things like just making a gratitude list or starting to journal doesn't necessarily tackle maybe some of the more significant mental well-being and health challenges we can have, but it all adds up. It all compounds. And I know I talk about compound interest in the podcast, but it all comes together and it all adds up to this level of acceptance we've got that, listen, I am actually a bit down these days and I've got some challenges going on that I need to address. How I talk to myself. We're not asking you to be blindly positive, but we're asking you to see the good in situations. And we spoke about Dale having a job where he was well paid. He lived with a nice family, had a nice car. Obviously, we don't want to tell him he can't see the wood for the trees and that he's not being grateful, but constantly reinforcing and thinking about how good these things are and talking to himself in a positive way would have perhaps, and I'm saying perhaps because there's a caveat to all these things, made him feel better during that period, and he would have been less anxious if he'd been ticking these other boxes that might have helped what was going on and what the thought processes were inside of his head. What are some of the other things, Dale, that we can think about? And again, just to reiterate, these are just lifestyle changes that we can look to make that maybe won't be the be all and the end all, but they might add up to making you feel better.
Again, it's, as you said, it's just all these things that add up. It could be down to the food that you're eating. It could be down to the way that and most importantly, the way that you're living your life. You need to delve in to the way you need to look at things from an external point of, right, okay, as you said, you might have everything that you've got going for you. You've got all these things that society say that is a good thing. But when it comes to things like movement, like if you've never moved, it doesn't need to be a mad crazy gym session. Get out in the natural light. If you get out in the natural world, I can guarantee you're going to feel a lot better. Get out in the natural sunlight, you will feel better. I know we live in Scotland, it's a little bit harder, but get out, get a raincoat on and just kind of go into nature, see where things are. And it might sound woo-woo hippie, but trust me, getting outside is always going to help. Moving in general is always going to help. And this is one thing that used to really stick in my mind when I was in the gym. And I can guarantee you, when you are going through mental health or you are struggling with anxiety or depression, the thing we lose out is that control over our thoughts and how we think, what we're doing, and it can almost consume us as a person. And the only release that I ever had was that gym and going and working out, is putting my headphones in, getting a workout done, and I was in control. I was in control of what I was moving, what I was doing, and that feeling of endorphins after was just unbelievable. And it was just that aspect of control that made me feel so much better. So control the controllables is one of the main things that I will always say to someone. You might be feeling like shit, you might be feeling a bit confused up in your head, or you might be feeling down, but control what you can control, and I can guarantee you things will start to change. And just be patient with what you're actually doing.
Yeah, and appreciate if somebody was being hypercritical of us, Dale, they might throw back that it's obvious that exercising more or sleeping better, which we can maybe come on to, or drinking more water or eating more healthy is going to make me feel fine. But I just can't. And we're not asking you to flip the switch overnight. We're saying to you that there's little things that you know, and it's common sense, that I'll feel better if I go for a morning walk. I'll feel better if I eat high protein, nutritious foods with vegetables. I'll feel better if I go to the gym 3 or 4 days a week and I get a bit sweaty and I listen to the music that I like. And that might sound like the hardest thing in the world right now, particularly when, like you say, Dale, there were elements where you were lying in bed thinking, I don't know if I want to get up and go to work today, let alone go for a walk at 7 a.m. before I have to get in my van. And it's these lifestyle changes that they do add up. they're not easy to do initially. They're not magic pills that you pop that the doctor gives you that make you feel better. They're systemic lifestyle changes and habits that you need to develop and build in. And I don't think there's anyone out there that could tell you that these things won't make you feel better. But I guess it's just, if you haven't done these things, try and make yourself a little bit. Try and make yourself do it once a week to start with. Then
try it like that. Like, what you need to think about is, what have you got to lose right now? Like, you feel like absolute crap. You've got nothing to lose. You need to be accepting the fact of, right, what I'm doing right now is not working for me. I've got everything I might ever want. Again, you might not even have, you might have a terrible life, and that's why you're feeling this certain way. Like, but you need to try and change something. This is something that I say to my clients as well. It doesn't even need to be from a mental health point of view. If you're unhappy with anything in your life, and you're unhappy with your physique, your mental health, the way you're living your life, you're in that situation because you've been doing the things that you've been doing. It's not working for you. So something has to change. And it's just about trying to take that small percentage of small improvements. And as you said, like, that 1% improvement will compound effect over a long period of time, and it will get better. It just takes time, and it's about taking that first step of, maybe, okay, I'm going to try and go a walk. I'm going to try and go to the gym. I'm maybe going to try and aim for 2 litres of water today. I'm going to try and eat a little bit more vegetables. I'm going to try and focus on my sleep. Whatever it may be, it's just about taking that first step and understanding that things will be all right if you do that, and it will get better.
Yeah. And I think there's elements of this that will sound maybe harsh sometimes, but we're asking you to, one, accept what's going on, which is actually being loving to yourself by accepting that there's a problem. But the next step, it really is an element of personal responsibility in what's happening day to day. And people don't always want to hear this, but I'll talk about things like drinking drugs, and I'll say to you that ultimately, if you're using a lot of different stimulants outside of this and you're feeling bad, these could be contributing factors in it, and it might be your escapism. And I'm not going to say that there's good forms and bad forms of escapism, but I can certainly say that exercise is probably a more sustainable form of escapism than going down the rabbit hole of a bottle of Buckfast or a bottle of vodka every weekend and a bag of gear, because you don't realize what that has long term. And I know you've spoken a wee bit about this before, Dale, in terms of, like, when you were feeling at your worst, it's easy to think, oh, a stick and plaster might be just a mad one with your friends. But what was Monday? What was Monday and Tuesday like?
Oh, it was terrible. Like, it was like, anytime I went out and I had one with my friends, I would be depressed until almost the Friday again, and then you do it all over again, because you just, again, it comes to that. You want away from that suffering straight away. You want out of that situation. You go, do you know what? I've had an absolute horrible week. I'm just going to go out and get absolutely out my face and forget about this for a few hours. And it feels good at the time, and then until you kind of do that cycle again, and it's just over and over and over, and you're just going to get nowhere. It's not until you kind of put the brakes on and go, do you know what? This is not good for me. And the thing is that drugs and drink are not the sole problem of why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Like, I don't agree with people going, that it's because you're taking gear or because you're drinking all the time, that's why you're feeling that way. Now, it does not help the situation, but it's not the problem at all, unless, of course, you have an addiction to that, and that is then becomes the problem there. But it's definitely not helping the problem, put it that way. It's definitely making the problem worse, but it's not actually it's not the problem of why you're feeling the way you're feeling.
Another thing that perhaps isn't helping, and it's funny because we're coming to you via that platform, social media consumption and some of the junk metrics and values that we can hold around that, Dale. What can we do to improve in that space?
I think when it comes to, like, we spoke about this briefly of how society holds what is cool and what is not, and what is important and what isn't important. Like, right now, it's like about having followers. That's the aim of the game. Looking and coming from this kind of materialistic world of, like, look what he's got, or she's got this bag, she's got that, she's got all these followers, and that, but the perceivedness of being cool and happy and got the life as per se. But when it comes to, like, moving on from what you consume, and I always speak about it as well, you are what you consume, and that doesn't come from just a food standpoint or nutrition standpoint. That also comes from the social media that you consume. If someone, in my opinion, if someone is not inspiring you, not giving you motivation or educating you, then I don't really see the reason why you should be following that. I get that some accounts might be funny, might give you a good laugh, and that's cool, and that's your downtime. But if you notice that you're following these people and it upsets you, and it causes you anxiety, or it makes you feel down, and it makes you feel like you're not good enough, then simply take yourself away from that and start introducing yourself to these new people that are giving you a bit of life and you can relate with. This is how I started to better my mental health, as we spoke about at the start. It's start to consume something that makes you feel better, instead of looking at something and going, I've not got that, I hate my life, this is shit.
Yep.
That makes sense? That makes sense, yeah?
That makes total sense, Dale. And I think you're right when it comes to those junk metrics around social media about how many followers we've got, how many likes we get. Her photo got more likes than mine did, and I was wearing the same outfit or something like that. Or as a guy, he's looking more ripped than me on holiday than I was, or whatever it is, because we can't just bash females just to social media, because I've seen guys use it appallingly as well when it comes to their mental health.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to our use of social media and we're talking about unfollowing or not looking at stuff, I know it's actually really difficult when you've maybe got friends from school or uni or work that you don't want to necessarily have a confrontation with by unfollowing. And I'm not saying this as a guaranteed trick or trick, but you can mute stories, you can mute posts. So if there's somebody that you're still an acquaintance with, but you're not liking what they're putting out there on social media, you can hit the mute button, you can hit the mute post, mute stories, and you don't have to consume their stuff. And it avoids maybe that confrontation of, you unfollowed me. And that can be an anxious act if somebody has to confront you to say,
totally agree,
why have you unfollowed me? So you can make that conscious decision if you want to avoid that. And very difficult for you to end up in a confrontation if you've just muted and you've taken yourself away from the situation. Equally, and this was a kind of fairly challenging conversation that I had, but somebody messaged me to say, I'm actually unfollowing your page just now. I didn't know the person, but they said, I'm moving to a more functional style of training. And at that point, I was posting purely aesthetic sided or aesthetic aimed content. And he said, I'm moving to a more functional side. I'm going to have to put on a bit of weight and a bit of timber, and I'm going to have to fuel myself. And looking at you ripped out your box year round isn't doing it for me. And I said, I'm really sorry that you feel that way and that I've made you feel insecure in any form or shape. And I hope that the rest of my content is contributing to you in another way in terms of mindset, career, or anything like that.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, he didn't need to see what I was posting, and he actually took the time to say to me that was why. And again, it didn't sit great with me, and I felt, fuck, maybe I need to change what I'm putting out there. But equally, it didn't serve his mental health and his goals at that point to follow my page. So he had absolutely no obligation to do so, and I didn't feel that I could make him. There was no need for me to do that. And I think people need to adapt their feed based on that. And equally, Instagram moving things like the like counter and how many followers people have got, really, we need to stop concerning ourselves with that, because I know people with hundreds of thousands of followers that I've met in person. One, they don't look like their Instagram. Don't worry about it. You say, I'll never look like her photo. Don't worry, neither does she. And then the second part is, some of these people are absolutely miserable, Dale. They're absolutely miserable. No, they're consumed. They're on their phone they're on Instagram for 5 hours a day. They're completely consumed by how many likes.
They're consumed by what that they perceive as themselves to be like on Instagram. I do a thing, switch off Wednesdays or wind down Wednesdays. I'm stuck between the two of what it may be, and I think it's something that a lot of people should really, really look at doing. It's something that I've learnt about through during the whole kind of COVID lockdown, and I think we should finish in some maybe positive notes of what COVID has managed to give us together. But for myself, a lot of my business is run through, well, my full business pretty much been built on Instagram. I find that myself, I feel like I get consumed by my Instagram. And it's very, very hard for someone who runs a successful business to kind of take themselves away from that, of being known that you need to be consistent. And it's also about, for me, having that balance of, right, okay, I need to be consistent for everyone here also, but I'm forgetting about other aspects of my life. Me for number one, and everyone else, the reason why I'm doing this for, like, my family, my dog, my relationships, everything else. This is all suffering because I want to be so consistent putting content up. And I always thought, right, I'll just try and post every single day. But for me, taking a Wednesday off is generally the best thing that I've ever done. And it's still hard for me to kind of take myself away completely from it, because I'm like, oh, I've got a great idea, I'm going to post it. And I go, no, put your phone down, take some time, and be present for a change. Like, I'm not saying I'm not present, but I'm never always fully completely present when I've got other things running on my mind, like my business, like my social media, or whatever it is. Wednesday is my day off. It is also my girlfriend's day off, and it is the day that where we literally yesterday, all we did yesterday was put our phones down, sat on the couch and watched like 3 movies and ate some donuts and chilled out the dog, took the dog a walk. And that honestly is literally one of the best things that I've ever done, is just completely switch off, not thinking about content, not thinking about anybody else. Social media is always going to be there. It's going to be there tomorrow. Put your phone down and give yourself a bloody break, because I can guarantee it'll be the best thing that you'll do.
Yeah, we all get that FOMO, that fear of missing out. Oh my God, what happens if I miss this post? Don't worry, it's going to be there tomorrow. Unless it's an Instagram story, it's only there for 24 hours.
But you think straight away, you're like, oh my God, I've no posted today. My business is down the drain. That's it. My business is gone. I've lost all my followers. But it's not the case.
But even from somebody that doesn't create content, don't worry about it. There'll be stuff there tomorrow that you want to look and read, and that's going to be absolutely fine. So I think that's some actionable stuff there in terms of lifestyle changes they can make, Dale. We've spoken a lot about your experience and your first contact, your plunge, your rise, the education experience that you went through, some sources the listeners can go into, and then most importantly, ways that we can start to address things from a lifestyle perspective to give ourselves not necessarily guaranteed better mental health, but the best possible chance to better how we feel. Now, I know that you've been working on a project with another former podcast guest, Chris Burns, and it's almost ready. Do you want to share with the listeners what that looks like, and we can move forward from there?
Yeah, so it is going to be an ebook that myself and Mr. Chris Burns have helped write, and we've not got a title yet. That's one of the last things that we need to think about is a title, and it is kind of what myself and Colin have been talking about, has been the rise, the plunge, and there's one point of it that I put in the book, and it's speaking about the elite minded, and this is kind of the main kind of driver behind the book, and it's the way I think about it, and this is what I've came up with is, for a start, I'm not a doctor. Okay, it doesn't say Dr. Dale Burke is on Colin's podcast. I'm not a best New York Times selling author. That's not what I am. I'm just an average guy who's went through some shit in his life, and I'm giving my experience and I'm giving my opinion on things, and I'm hoping that the book can really relate to people who live a real life and can really relate to my story. And just going on briefly of when first point of relating to someone was when I was going through a tough time, and I instantly heard someone talk about it on the radio, and I was like, I know exactly what that guy's talking about. Because when you go through mental health, it's very hard to describe it to someone who's never really went through it. It is difficult. It's like a number of things. My head feels fuzzy. I feel like I'm walking on clouds. I feel like I can't concentrate on things. There's a number of different things that people will express how they feel. And this guy was speaking about his mental health. And I was like, oh my God, I know exactly what that guy's talking about. And it made me feel so good. I actually nearly gave myself a little bit of a cry because I could relate to this person. And this is what I'm hoping this book can do, is and help people relate to me, to help themselves, and also to make them feel like they're not alone. And the main point and driver behind the book is going to be the elite minded. And if you do get the book, this is the main point. And what I think about being elite minded is that to get to a point of bettering yourself and having a better perspective on the world, not always necessarily. I always think you need to go through some sort of hardship, where that doesn't need to be mental health, doesn't need to be anything like that, but you need to go through some sort of hardship in your life to figure out that the way that you've been looking at the world is not quite right. You need a different perspective. And for a lot of people, for myself. And right now, going through what I went through is genuinely the best thing that's ever happened to me. Having my anxiety, having a bit of depression, and really, really struggling with it is the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life, because without that, I wouldn't have been forced to change my perspective. I wouldn't be forced to look at building different habits in my routines in my life. I would not be in the position that I'm in right now and be able to appreciate what I've got. And I'm a lot more elite minded than what I was before I went through all that. And that's what I want people to drive home from this book, and I really hope it does drive home. And I hope that you all grab a copy when I do come up with a title and release it.
we're almost there, and having read it, I really like the short, sharp, punchy style of it. And like you say, that relatability aspect is huge. It's great, and we've recommended some books by people that are doctors and are extremely well informed and well read on this subject. But you're somebody that spent his time researching it, has gone through it, and is offering a little bit of his perspective and his opinion on how we can move forward. And that's what we've managed to do during this podcast today. If you're still with us at this point, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a screenshot, tag myself and tag Dale, and I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.